Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, have your notes out so you're ready to go. We're going to be continuing on with the Renaissance, looking at the Roman Catholic Church and the papacy. Interesting stuff there. And I need to set up already for your big quiz. I'm giving you too many easy grades so far. You guys are like, well, that's okay. We're going to be having a quiz on the chapter dealing with this particular thing. Maybe I'll have that set up for you guys next time. And we'll have that after the break because I'm going to give you plenty of time to make sure that you read through the chapter and that you come in prepared for that. Having said that, students, you guys are like, why do I need extra credit now? Everything seems so fine, but give it time. Take advantage of this extra credit opportunity. Okay, it comes along once every 4 years. I'm giving you the sheet in front of you, and as a social studies teacher, I always have a great deal of interest in presidential elections. And we've got a presidential election coming up 4 weeks from tomorrow, November the 3rd. It's a Tuesday, and actually it's a blue day. You guys will be here on that day. So I would encourage you strongly to turn in the sheet of paper that I've given you by that day, and not much more before it, so that you can take advantage of the very latest information. Presidential elections come along every 4 years. We've got Donald Trump, Republican, and Joe Biden, Democrat. And you'll learn more officially about how this works next year in your government class. But we have a funny, interesting thing in our Constitution that was created, you'll actually learn about this next semester, when 13 colonies declare themselves states, and then they're all independent, and they kind of decide that they want to be a little bit closer, so they form a strong national government and a constitution, and part of that is how to elect a president. And it's not as simple as every person in the country gets one vote. If it was as simple as every person in the country gets one vote, who would be president right now? No. Who got the most individual votes in the last presidential election? There you go, Hillary Clinton. Right? And you're like, Biden? No, Biden wasn't running the last time around. He was Obama's vice president for 8 years before that. How it works is each state gets a certain number of electors based on their population, and they always sort of, and anyway, so in order to win, you have to win the electoral vote. How many of you guys are like, oh, I knew that? So take a look at the back. See that map there? You're going to be coloring that in. Now you can choose blue for Joe Biden and red for Donald Trump. If you want to do a different color scheme and so forth, whatever, knock yourself out. Just make sure it's really clear what your color scheme is if you're going to be going for the extra credit. And honestly, you can get up to 10 points extra credit. It's really easy to get a small number of extra credit points. If you get them all right, you get 10. Okay, flip over to the front again. And let me walk this through for you so that you can see how this works. Okay? What you'll be doing is you're going to write down the electoral votes in the column of the presidential candidate who you predict will win for the votes in each of the 56 contests. And you're like, 56 contests? Yes, Maine and Nebraska like to break theirs out into different component parts, so we'll go through that with you so you can understand that clearly. Otherwise, all the 48 other states and the District of Columbia, it's winner take all. If you come in first place in California, you get 55 electoral votes. If you come in first place in Idaho, you get 4 electoral votes. There's not much less than you can get than 4. You can get 3 if you win in Wyoming and Delaware and so forth. Anyway, so you're going to add up the columns. Whoever gets 270 or more electoral votes is the predicted winner. In order to get the credits, you must also color the map on the back, which we already talked about. You can choose any other different colors if you want. Be sure to use the research right up until the absolute latest due date. That is Tuesday, November the 3rd. That's election day. Can't turn it in after that because, that's not a prediction. That's just like saying what we already are starting to know. Up to 10 extra credit points can be earned as you go through here. You can see If you get 30 correct, that's worth 1. 31 to 35 is worth 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Now, if you look at each of the different states here, just be careful, because I know I try to explain this every 4 years, and sometimes somebody will go, I don't know, Alabama, maybe Trump will get 6 and Biden will get 3. No! It either goes all on one side or all on the other for each of the different ones. So, for example, Alabama. Now, knowing what this is an example of, like, rightly on the polls and expectations in each of the different states. There's Alabama, bright red. So likely that who's going to win Alabama? Trump. So that's probably going to be, if he ends up losing Alabama, I have a feeling that this whole country is going to be like blue. Same thing for Idaho. So if you were to decide that you think Alabama is going to go for Trump, then you would put the number 9 for Trump on that line and so forth. That way, when you get to the bottom, you can add the column totals. Yep. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. And then same thing for the other column there. Okay? So you're going to be doing them for each of the different states now. Does that make sense? Now take a look at Maine. Maine's got 4 electoral votes altogether. Nebraska's got 5 electoral votes altogether. If you flip over on the back, you'll see I tried to actually draw the boundaries of the congressional districts. You're like, what the heck do congressional districts have to do with anything? Well, those 2 states decided instead of winner of the entire state, they're going to base it in part on who wins in each of those congressional districts. Like Idaho has 2 congressional districts, and California has 53 congressional districts. Nebraska has 3. So if you look at Nebraska, I tried to kind of put it in there. There's like the 1st congressional district. It's kind of small. And maybe, right now, it's listed as brown. That's what that indicates. And that means too close to call. For the other 2 congressional districts and for the whole state, it's likely that Trump will have that. Maine is kind of interesting because one of the congressional districts, it's close, too close to call, and then the other is definitely for Biden, and then the state is like leaning or likely to go for Biden. Does that make sense? Okay? So you can see, this is interesting. Some of the really critical states like Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, too close to call. Although at this point, if the election were held today, and this is an accurate measurement of the opinions of people in those particular states, who would win? This, on this particular website, shows you, there's the 270 line. And at this point, if all the states that are solid Democrat or solid Biden, dark blue, likely kind of halfway blue, or leaning to Biden, Biden would have it, even if all of the too close to call states came in for Trump. A lot of things are going to happen for Trump in the remaining 4 weeks for him to move this. Yeah. Interesting point. If you look, like say for example, the big state of, actually if we were to have Alaska as like its real size, it would take up much, much more space than it is right there. It's not the size of the state geographically, it's the population. That's what makes the most difference. So you can even see like, New Jersey, you can't even see it right there, but New Jersey has 14 electoral votes, and you got a state that's much larger in size, like Oklahoma, but they don't have as many electoral votes. That's why it's always confusing. You look at that and you're like, looks like Trump's doing pretty well. I see a lot of red. Not necessarily. Electoral votes? Every state gets 2 to begin with, and then they get added to that the number of congressional seats that they have. And the number of congressional seats, you'll learn this officially next semester, is based on the population. Okay? So if you've been in California, you're like, yeah, there's a lot of people there. Big cities, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and so forth. Idaho, we've got Boise, and then we got a lot of smaller communities. We have enough for 2 congressional districts, right? My dad, Orville Hanson, served in one of the congressional districts, so we're a fairly smaller. But if you go to Wyoming, they only got 1 representative for the entire House of Representatives, And then, of course, they only get 3. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Okay. What is going to happen over the next 4 weeks? I don't know. Is Trump going to come? Where's Trump right now? He is in the hospital, Walter Reed Hospital, because he came down with COVID. Right? So he went to the hospital, I think it was on Friday. And so he's been in the hospital. He may come home today. I don't know. Would it impact his campaigning? Perhaps, if he can't go and travel very much. So there's a lot of things happening out there in the world of politics. Would you like the opportunity of getting some extra credit? How hard does it look like to get at least 30? I mean, most of those, if they've got kind of like a darkish color, that's pretty solid. You will be able to go to some of these same websites. I just typed in 270 to win, boom, it came up. Some of the other ones are listed there as well. If you just type presidential election predictions, you'll get all kinds of various helpful information. And just a reminder, when you do the main predictions, it's Maine's 1st congressional district, 2nd congressional district, and then Maine total, who's going to get that. Okay? Question? How many of you guys, on the basis of what you know, believe that Trump will win the election in spite of what this prediction says? Okay? Looking for a Trump comeback then. And actually it's interesting because 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was expected to win, and she was doing quite well in the polls and so forth, but she ultimately didn't win. How many of you guys expect Biden to ultimately win when this is all said and done? Okay? How many of you guys are like, no, it's not going to be Trump or Biden. It's going to be somebody else. Really? No. Well, you're going to have to make a prediction because it's going to come up either one way or another. Although somebody's like, is it possible for a tie? Is it? There's 538 electoral votes. Is it possible they could split evenly? 269 to 269. I'll be curious to see if anyone does that. I've had that prediction. Sometimes people will do that, but it depends on which way, which state goes, and so forth and so on. Anyway, should be fun. Do that. Don't miss out on that opportunity. That's good for up to 10 points. Will somebody predict the entire election accurately, every single place? I don't know. One thing, though, is I don't think on some of these states, some of the ones that are much closer, I don't think we're going to know right away because it's going to take a while this year to get all the polling information in, the actual ballots after they've been cast. Okay? Questions or comments? All right. How many times are you guys going to be coming to school next week? 2? How many of you guys are going to be to school twice next week? You going to come to school next week? Why not? What's the problem? You need a break next week? Raise your hand if you think you need a break next week. All right, fine, we'll go home. So next week there'll be a break, and then we'll come back to it. We've got a full week after that, so you guys will be here twice on the week after the break. And then after that, it is kind of a funky week because we got PSAT, and you guys signed up for PSAT? Okay, very good. So that'll be going on, I want to say Thursday, on a green day. Yes. All right. Okay, let's get to it. In your notes, we are now going to be talking, oh, that's the wrong one, about the bullet point dealing with Roman Catholic popes during the Renaissance. Okay? So we were talking about Johannes Gutenberg, printing press, Niccolo Machiavelli, and the prince, better to be loved or feared. You can't have both. Or as Steve Carell says, it's better that the people love me so much they fear how much they're loving me. Yada, yada, yada. So let's get into some issues having to do with the Roman Catholic Church. Write this down, okay? Obviously, if we haven't established this already, the Roman Catholic Church, that form of Christianity, is the dominant form of religion in Western Europe, the area that we're looking at. So we're talking about Italy, and then going to the west of that, Spain and Portugal. If you go kind of over to France and up north to the German areas, if you go over to Britain and Ireland, go all the way up to Scandinavia, like Sweden and Denmark and Norway, it's all Catholic. Okay? And who's the head of the Catholic Church? The Pope. Okay? If you go more to the east, then you're going to get into more Eastern Orthodox. Okay? So that's going on over into the eastern part, especially when you head over into Russia and Greece and so forth. So at this particular time, you got a pope in Rome. What do we know already about the pope in Rome? Is he poor? Or has he got a fair amount of money coming his way? He's got some fair amount of money coming his way. Okay? Where does he get his money from? Does he have to stand out on the street and hold his hand out? Does he? You think he does? No, I don't think so. Okay. We know he's got money to spend on some pretty cool art and architecture. Who is contributing? Yes? Tithes. Where are the tithes coming from? People. So these are offerings from Catholics throughout Western Europe. Got that? So you got regular tithes and offerings coming from Catholics. Part of it stays in the local community. A bunch of it also continues on to Rome. All right? Now, we know that the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. Write that down. The Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. And during the Renaissance, some things are going to be happening associated with the Pope. And, well, let's just tell you. I mean, before we actually get to the bottom of the page here, we're going to run into a little thing called the Protestant Reformation. And when the Protestant Reformation comes along, it is not going to be good for the Pope. The Pope does not go, oh, yay, Protestant Reformation. I was so looking forward to that. That's just so awesome. Because you know what's going to happen when the Protestant Reformation takes place? What's going to happen to the authority of the Pope? What's going to happen to this whole Western European Catholic thing? It's going to be broken apart. So when we're looking at this, it's like, whoa. And there's going to be differences of opinion, and some people are going to like go to war, and it's going to be wild. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a challenge. So we've got to look at the question, how did it get to be that way? If you got one person who's very much in charge of the church, what could possibly go wrong? All right, well, let's look at some of the things going on with the Roman Catholic Church at that particular time period. And some of them are going to be, some of them is kind of like, well, this is not a problem. The Roman Catholic Church has always had a pope that's been the head. But put this down. You ready? During the Renaissance in particular, some of the popes are going to be behaving a little bit less like the head of a church and more like, I don't know, a king. You're like, well, what's wrong with that? Why is there any problem with a pope behaving like a king? I mean, kings behave like kings. Why can't a pope behave like a king? What do you think, Sophia? Can a pope be like a king? Why not? What do kings do that you don't want popes to do? Like direct the people? Like boss them around and so forth? I mean, you sort of get this idea that the Pope is a religious person and is supposed to be kind and calm and soothing and encouraging and so forth. Now, we did know, I don't want to go all the way back there, that the Pope actually has a bunch of territory. This Pope right here, it's always fascinating. This Pope right here is Julius II. This was the one I told you about before, that sometimes he actually put on warrior outfits, like military outfits, to go lead his soldiers into war. He was known as the warrior pope. And you're like, he doesn't look like he'd be a very good warrior. Looks a little old there. He's got his long dark beard, or his long gray beard. But sometimes, write that down, sometimes it looks like they're more interested in conquering people and going to battle. That's one nick on the popes. It's like, come on, popes, you're supposed to be the head of the Catholics, not trying to expand your papal states, your territory that you control in Europe. And here's another thing, all right? Here's another thing that is going to be a little bit of an issue, all right? You guys are in high school history right now. Let's see if you can raise your hand, take a volunteer. What is one thing that a king can definitely have that a pope is not supposed to have? Very good. Write that down. Very good. All right, so a king can have a queen, right? And then, I mean, why is having a queen important? Very good. Excellent. So if you're going to be the king of a country and your queen, you want to have children, and then your son becomes the next queen and so forth. I mean, that's how they pass down authority there. So why can't the Pope do that? Well, what does that have to do with marriage and having children? No, it's an interesting question. It's okay if you don't know the answer. According to the folks back then. Can somebody be a religious leader and have a family life? Interesting question. You got it right, though. Put this down. In the Roman Catholic Church back then, and actually today, if you want to be the Pope or any other position, all the way to like a village priest or like a monk hanging out in a monastery, no marriage. Write that down. No marriage. And in fact, they didn't mean just no marriage. They meant no nothing when it came to messing around in an intimate way with other human beings. You know what I'm saying? What is the word for that? It's not celebrate. It's celibate or celibacy. Shall I spell that for you? Celibate. Celibate. So if you walk home after school today and said, Mom, Dad, I just decided, I'm not really quite sure what the word means, but I'm going to be celibate for the rest of my life. You're laughing. What have you just declared? In an intimate fashion that could potentially ultimately lead to children and so forth. Got that? All right, do you understand? So, and actually it's very good because the idea, and you guys are like, you've heard about this, because this is the way it was in the Middle Ages. Becca has pointed out that in the Roman Catholic Church, if you want to be a priest or any other position, you need to be celibate. You need to be faithful to God and have no personal, intimate relations with anyone else. Okay? It's going to be very interesting because are there other religions where people are very faithful within their religious context and they also have a family life? Marriage and kids and things like that. Sure, that's going to be an interesting debate. And they still actually have that debate a bit in the Roman Catholic Church. If you look at other religions, for some of them it's like, yeah, you can do both. Others, it's like, no. How about for women? Could women have a position within the Roman Catholic Church? Anybody know? What was the position for women in the Roman Catholic Church? None. She says none. There was no position whatsoever. Did you mean that? N-O-N-E? N-O-N-E? None? N-U-N? What's a nun? That's right. Actually, that's right. Very good. Write it down. None. Okay? None of the above. Yes, she is from the above. A female could be a nun. Now, could she be pope? No. Could she be like one of the high archbishop positions or cardinals that actually get a vote for the pope? No, she couldn't. Okay. You're like, wow, I'm getting a little bit of a theme here in history. It seems like men seem to be in all of the very important positions. And yeah, I mean, it's like, hello. It's like right up. Someday, is it going to happen in your lifetime? Someday, the wall of presidents is going to include a female. What do you think? How many of you guys predict there will be a female president of the United States in your lifetime? I think even in my lifetime. That's a little less than yours potentially. But yeah. But no popes. Somebody actually did point out, once upon a time there was like a Mulan kind of a woman and so forth. She kind of went, and they called her Pope Joan. She actually disguised herself and became pope for a while. But other than that, the top positions are for men. Women, if they want to go into the church and become a nun, or in charge of nuns like an abbess, they also make an oath of celibacy. Okay, you got that? Celibacy, celibacy, celibacy. So here's the problem. Some of the popes are not following those rules. They're not following those rules. Now, they don't get officially married because that would be a clear violation of the rules. But they've got, some of them have got mistresses on the side. You know what that word means? A mistress on the side. That is a female. They're not married to her, but they're having intimate relations on the side. So is the Pope following the rules? Nope. But he's like, hey, whatever, I can do this. Now, to the extent that people find out about those sorts of things, what do you think? Does that make people think higher of the Pope or a little bit lesser of the Pope? A bit lesser. So that's one of the things that's going on during the time of the Renaissance. We're like, come on. Either change the rule, right, and have popes be able to be married, or stick to the rules. You got that? So that is a negative during this time period. Another thing seems to be, write this down as well, it seems like the popes maybe are too interested in money. Put that down. They may be too interested in money, and, what do you need money for? Well, you need money for art. Good grief. You just can't let all the people in Florence and Venice, have all of the great art and so forth. You need to have great art and architecture in Rome. So it's like, well, we need that. Although, write this down, the popes will say that it's not unto the glory of me that I am gathering this money and spending it on great art. No. It's not to show that I am great. It is to show that who is great? God. So let's spend all the money to show that God is great by building big churches and filling them with lots of wonderful art. Who would ever have a criticism about spending that money that way within a religious organization? Can you think of any criticism for a religious leader spending lots and lots of money on a big fancy building? And write this down too. Really, really nice clothes, because they wear really, really nice clothes. That's not a shabby outfit. That does not come cheap. Can you think of any argument as to maybe would there be a better way? Is there a better way of spending money in the church than on big, beautiful art and buildings and clothes? Can't think of any? Yeah? Giving to the poor? Is that what religion is supposed to do? Like, help the people? Yeah, that was exactly the argument. Write that down. That's one of the things that some people are going to be complaining and saying, you need to do more to give to the poor. Help out the people who are in need. Enough of this, you're giving glory to God and so forth and so on. You could do more to help out people in need. Does that make sense? So you get some of these arguments that are going along the way. And these are debates that go on within religious organizations before this time period, during this time period, and all the way up until the present. Is the money being spent wisely and so forth? And some of the people within the Catholic Church are going, I'm just going to set an example. So they would go, I get rid of all of my wealth. Francis of Assisi was a man who ultimately the Catholics will call saint. Gave away all his wealth, and he went out and served the poor. And the Catholics were like, wow, that's amazing. More people should do things like that. Well, and there were some folks saying maybe the Pope should do things like that too. Nepotism was another problem. Nepotism. You know what nepotism is? Anybody have any idea what nepotism? Ask your family. Ask your brother or your sister who you put into a really good job. Oh, wait, now there we go. Giving good jobs to their family members. Now, here's a really strange one. Some of the popes were giving really good jobs, like church positions, that would have lots of money coming through those positions to people who were related to them, like their children. You're like, how is it possible for a pope to have children? Well, sometimes, anyway. Or their brother or their cousin or so forth. It's a favoritism. It helps to promote your family. It's favoritism, not on the basis of how good they're going to do the job, but because they're part of the family. Does that make sense? So if you ever get into an important position, don't be surprised if some of the rules say you can't do nepotism. You can't just hire these people because they're in your family, because that's not a fair way of doing things. Okay? Another thing has to do with, it's just like so much money. There's so much focus on money. And one of the ways that people brought more money to their communities is by building big churches. Now, this seems rather strange. If you're in a community and you build a big, big church, how is that going to make you money in that community? If they build a big church in Florence, people will say, wow, you spent a lot of money in that church. Of course, if you want to see it, yes, exactly, you got to go there. Now, back in those days, they didn't really have, well, let's not call them tourists. How many of you guys would like to go to Italy someday and see some of these things like firsthand? Would you? Oh yeah, I would recommend it. And in fact, Florence, Rome, Venice are huge tourist attractions. One of the #1 destinations for Americans and others wanting to come see those things. To stand in the Sistine Chapel and look up and go, whoa, Michelangelo. Tourists want to see the art and architecture and so forth. Back in the day, there were a lot of people who would travel. What do you call somebody who travels a great distance to go to a location, to go to a holy building, and we'll talk about some of the other holy things that could be inside that building? What do you call that? You may have learned about this word in learning about the Middle Ages or medieval time period. I'll give you a clue. I'm going to go, #1 destination for people who would be going on these holy tours would be Jerusalem. They go to Jerusalem. They go to the place where purportedly Jesus was crucified and buried. Yes? A what? Sacrilege? Oh, I'm not familiar with that term. Pilgrimage? That's... You've heard it before. Going on a holy destination. Well, this is the word, this is probably a more common term. We'll write it for you. Pilgrimage. And what are you called if you go on a pilgrimage? You're called a pilgrim. Okay? You go on a holy destination. You go on a holy quest. You're like, I mean, in one sense, like, you know, it's similar to like being a tourist today. You go travel there. You spend money there. Now, you have to spend money there. You need a place to stay there. If you're the Pope or any other of the people in Europe and so forth in charge of various different important cities, do you want pilgrims to come to your city? Yes, they'll stay. They'll worship. They'll spend money. It's good for the economy, right? You're like, wait a minute. Let's look at this. Let's pull this apart. Why does somebody need to go to Jerusalem in order to have a super positive religious experience? If you're a Muslim, it's actually part of the Muslim belief system. You need to go on a pilgrimage once in your life. Anybody know where? To Mecca in Saudi Arabia, where Muhammad, the founder of Islam, first received the message from Allah, according to Islam. You have to do that. A lot of people were doing that in those days. They went to Jerusalem. Problem, some of the pilgrims who went to Jerusalem were harassed in the, like about over 1,000 years ago because, by gosh, the Muslims were in charge of Jerusalem, and so they were giving them a problem. Do you remember what happened? You learned about this in the 8th grade. What happened when too many Muslims were harassing too many Christian pilgrims in Jerusalem? What did the Christians do in response? Yes, the Knights. Yeah, remember the Knights, the Crusades? Do you remember hearing about the Crusades? Where they're like, we're going to put an end to this. We're going to go over there and we're going to fight them. And so they took over the Holy Land. They took over Jerusalem for, about 100 years or so until the Muslims took it back. So Jerusalem is a difficult place to go on a pilgrimage. What do you suppose? Write this down. What do you suppose the top places to go on pilgrimages were during the time of the Renaissance? Or even a little bit before? What would be a really top place to go to a pilgrimage? Let me see. We can't go to the place where Jesus was, but are there some other important places that could be like you really got to go there? What do you think? Do you think Rome would be an important one? Write it down. Rome. Very important place. And it's not just because, the Pope is there. Here is a very, very interesting and important thing. If important events occurred at a place and you have a big, huge cathedral built there, that really makes it. But what do you need inside that big cathedral to really bring it home so that people really know that this is a holy, 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 holy site? The what? A tabernacle, a beautiful altar and so forth. A cross, you need to have a... Whoa! What if you could have the original cross in your church? What if? Would that make it more attractive for pilgrims to come to your church? What if you had a piece, because they didn't have the absolute whole thing together, but various different churches, you write this down, they claimed they had a piece of the true cross. I don't know. How can you tell? They said they did. What about if a church said, right here, come to a pilgrimage to our church. We have the bones of Jesus Christ. You're laughing. Would that be a problem? Why would that be a problem? According to Christianity, where are the bones of Jesus Christ? Are they still in the tomb? According to Christianity, he got up alive and left the tomb, did not return. His bones are not in the tomb. So if a church claimed to have the bones of Jesus Christ, then everyone go, right. No way. According to Christianity, Jesus is up. But what about the bones of important early Christians? The bones of Peter or Paul or any of the disciples. Would that be important? Write it down. Anybody know the name of what do you call those things? Bones or pieces of the true cross? Very good. Relics. Do I have that spelled out for you? I don't think I have that spelled out for you. It's really easy to spell. Relics. I tell you what, relics were, and in some places still are, a very big deal during that time period. Here's the problem. Here's the good part of it. If you got relics, and everyone believes you've got relics of very important religious Christian early leaders and so forth, more people are going to come on a pilgrimage to your area. And the more pilgrims come, is that good for your local economy? Oh, we're being so cynical and so forth. The idea is that if you were in close proximity with the bones of such and such important person, then your prayers will be more likely to be answered in the affirmative. Yes, I will do this. Yes, you understand that? That's one of the goals behind praying when you get to that location, going on that long pilgrimage to get to that location. Now, does anyone see any potential problems? What if I were, yes? Say what? Oh, you get multiple things claiming the same thing? Well, of course, a piece of the true cross, how many pieces of the true cross could there be? I think it could be a lot, yeah. You mean there's people who would lie? If I were a relic dealer and I'm selling really bona fide relics of the bones of the early apostles and disciples and so forth, who are you to say that it is not true? Could you do DNA tests and so forth back then? No, but put that down. That is a problem. You do have people claiming that these bones are true. And then you get these big debates and so forth, and how do you prove it? It's really crazy. Some of the important relics, this is an important relic. Take a look here. There we got the word relic spelled for you. How many of you guys have ever heard of the Shroud of Turin? This is a fascinating thing. People have been debating about this for years and years and years. It's in Turin. It's an Italian city. It's in one of their cathedrals. They bring it out every once in a while for people to see. it is claimed that this is the fabric that was placed on Jesus after he was laid in the tomb, and that the impressions on those are from Jesus. And the folks who own that, I mean, year after year, during the Middle Ages, or Renaissance, could you test it? No, you couldn't test it. So people are like, oh, it's painted. It's not painted. They did other tests and so forth, and they found that actually the garments date back to the time of Jesus. Woo! How were those impressions made? There's no real clear information or anything. Look it up. You could look up some very interesting things on the Shroud of Turin. This one is not absolutely, totally clear, 100% a fake. But it's one of the relics going back to the time. Some of it got burned because somebody spilled something and it caught on fire. It didn't burn the whole thing, but yeah. Oh, no. Seriously? Oh my gosh. I've got this queued up. I'm going to show it to you next time. Sound of Music. I'm going to show you, have you guys ever seen The Sound of Music? The Sound of Music is a lovely, happy movie set in Austria about a woman who is a nun, and then she falls in love with a man who has 7 children and gets married to him. I will show you next time. When my wife and I were on our honeymoon, we went to visit some of the places where the film was set. And oh my gosh, in the altar, in the church, there's dead people. You're like a little bit disturbed. Should we just leave it at that? Why would they put dead people in the altar? Because these were important priests, archbishops from that church. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're going to show you that next time. Yeah, oh, the hills are alive with the sound of music. Yeah. All right, we'll get that next time. No, I'm just going to show you the part that is a little scary. Yeah. I thought I had enough time for that, but we didn't quite get to it.